Welcome back to Resonating Through Art. Today we'll be doing one-of-a-kind dice. So first, for our liquid cores, we're going to need spheres that are the right size to go into each of the dies. That can be individual, so you'll need to know the size of your dice for this to work. Then we're going to take acrylic paint and paint images onto the orbs. In my case, I'm doing koi ponds, so I'm painting a koi fish onto each of the orbs. This is just using simple acrylic paint. Acrylic paint tends not to stick real well to surfaces like glass or resin. However, once it's encased, it's actually very, very permanent. So this is kind of a neat way of protecting artwork, and I've used it in several different applications in the past. And just for a future note, once we get to the stage, we'll be filling the orbs with a mixture of water, glycerin, and just a touch of isopropyl alcohol. It's about 1:1 on the water and glycerin. And like I said, just a splash of the alcohol, and that just helps as a kind of a preservative. But for now, enjoy the tediousness of painting a koi fish. Now there are lots of different things that you can paint on the orbs. You can do dragons, you can do lots of different types of other animals, little forest scenes. Basically, it's just as much as your imagination can take you. There are some people who will use actual stickers. That is definitely an option that you can use instead of going through the hand-painted option. It's not quite as one of a kind when you use the stickers, but it does save you painting 7 individual koi fish. Admittedly, the markings are a lot of fun in these. It is kind of interesting to come up with all the different patterns and mimic what nature can do. don't forget that the koi have those nice little pieces in the front that make them koi. Almost a little bit of a flappy mustache. It's kind of cute, actually. Now, once your fish are all done, or whatever you're painting on the outside, admire what you've created. They're truly one of a kind, because no one else will have that, especially if you've done the hand painting. You're going to flip them upside down. In this case, at least, that's how I painted mine. Using a little bit of sticky tack, you can hold them in place while you put in the different colors or whatever it is that you wish to fill the insides of your containers with. In my case, I'm using some mica foil to give it kind of a real shimmery look. Almost looks like a bit of fish scaling on the inside. And then I'm also using chameleon powder. This is the aqua version, which has kind of a teal blue which flashes to gold. So once you have all of your insides filled, you're going to top it off with your dice juice, which is that water, glycerin, and isopropyl alcohol mixture that I mentioned before. Make sure you shake it up real well so it hasn't settled. Slowly fill up your orbs all the way to the top. And then I'm using a piece of acetate that I have punched out using a hole punch. That creates the perfect size for the tops of my orbs to kind of create a little block so that the resin, the UV resin, doesn't fall straight through. You can skip that step if you want, but I have noticed that it is much easier to not have like the glitter and stuff stick to the UV resin. So tack it in place first by having just a little bit go over the edge. And once it's secure, hit it with a larger rim of the UV resin. This step is very critical. If you miss doing some of the sealing, what'll happen is it'll leak inside of your dice after you pour the regular resin on, and that will interact and cause a white blemish. You don't want that. So take your time with this and make sure that they're really thoroughly sealed. And throw it underneath another light if you have one. Give it full time. I went ahead and did mine for twice the run just to make absolutely certain that my resin was cured. I have gone over dice pouring a number of times in videos, as well as mixing up resin. I'm skipping a lot of those sorts of steps because I figure people have probably seen it a lot. If you need more specifics on the basics, please feel free to go back and watch some of my previous ones. So here is my regular resin. This is normal epoxy 1:1. And I'm filling it up about a third of the way. I've added a little bit of liquid glitter to this particular mixture. The tinting that I've done is very, very light with cerulean blue. I just wanted a touch of color. If you go too deep, you're gonna miss what you're putting inside. You don't want to block the orbs. So here's the orbs. I have 3 that are different sizes. My D20 is the largest. The D12 is the second largest. So I'm inserting these ones first. You just kind of pop them in, let the resin go along the outside. And the very, very smallest one is my D4. The other 4 dice are the same size. So I save those orbs for last. And you just kind of push them in. Your sizing on these, you want to be just smaller than the dimension of where your numbers are. Once the orbs are in and settled, you're going to do like you normally do, 4 dice, and just fill up the mold all the way over the top, having a nice overspill to make sure that you have plenty so that there doesn't form a void. Give it a nice squish. Make absolutely certain that there's no bubbles hiding on the outsides of the orbs. That can happen and can get caught in the mold. And even putting it into a chamber will cause problems if the bubble is big enough. So because I have the cap mold, I'm pouring a nice solution over the top just to make absolutely certain, again, that we're not going to trap any voids. Give it a good spritz of alcohol. This is again just to make sure we're not having any bubbles on the inside. And that's after it's sat for a little bit. I do leave these to sit for a good period of time. Usually clean up to take care of that time frame. Now we're going to match our keys and roll the top on and give it a good squish. Make sure your pressure is nice and even. And I tend to put a metal weight over the top. This just makes sure that there's good pressure. This is going into my pressure pot. Again, you can do a desktop cure. You are risking bubbles being caught and forming, micro bubbles especially, but mine is 40 psi overnight or for the full duration cure of my resin. Once it's cured, I pull it out. Give it a good squish to kind of crack the extra flashing that's around the top. And break it free. Gonna give the mold a good cleanup after I'm done. Big thing to remember with dice molds is to give them a good cleanup. The more that you give them attention, the longer they're going to last. And you really want these to last. These tend to be kind of pricey. So I'm breaking each of the dice away from the numbers. Again, this is another step that will prolong the life of your mold. the numbers tend to be the most fragile portion of it since they are such a small piece of silicone. You really don't want that ripping. And now gently pop out each of the finished dice. Take your time with this, there's no hurry. You want to be gentle. Oh, look at those beauties. They sure are sparkly, and that's one of the things I like about liquid core dice. I love the motion that they give. Putting the chameleon powder in means that depending upon how the light is hitting the individual pieces of glitter, you actually have a different color. So these really are very beautiful. Now we gotta do our numbers on them, so after a little bit of cleanup, I'm taking acrylic paint and pushing it into the individual groove on the number. And then using a disposable wipe, push it against the desk. And the only paint that sticks is that which is inside of the groove. It's a much faster, easier way of doing the numbers. So I do all of my dice that way, and once they're done, I give them time to dry. Once the dice are dry, take another wipe and give them a good clean up, because you can tend to have some streaks that are left over from doing the simple swipe method. You can see a little bit on that 5 there. But there you go, it's all gone. And once your dice are done, admire the beauty. So these are definitely unique. Even if I were to paint the fish again, they would turn out slightly different since they are entirely hand done without a guide of any sort. Their markings would be different. Putting them into the mold, they're going to end up at a different orientation. That's the joy of doing one-of-a-kind dice. Whoever ends up with these will end up with something that truly is unique. So what are you going to put inside your liquid cores? How are you going to create something unique and fun? If you decide to try something like this, please, by all means, send me a link. I'd love to see what you've been up to. And as always, happy crafting.